scenes on the streets of south-east London as youths clashed.
535 markets emptied in 3 hours. 10 miles away, ethnic gangs are robbing local shops. And in just 1 year, 515,000 cases of shoplifting were recorded across the UK. Every day, from Manchester to East London, unknown individuals with machetes continue to rampage on the streets. On top of all this, just on Tuesday, up to 579 small boat migrants from Africa landed in Britain. This is exactly why Keir Starmer was labelled Britain's enemy number one. At 4:50 PM, the Stop the Boats protesters issued conditions. First, deport more than 1 million illegals. Second, the immediate resignation of Starmer and general elections. 4:54 PM. Having received no response, the rioters broke through the barricades. Up to 7 elite units were urgently deployed to the scenes. And in just 20 seconds, ruthless clashes began. The protesters started storming police lines from 3 sides. Around 118 arrests were made in minutes. The opposition weighed in. Starmer has effectively betrayed the country by handing it over to 1 million illegal migrants. Right after, over 15 police columns formed in several districts. Vans with loudspeakers appeared. But at 5:30 PM sharp, citizens flooded 9 streets at once. In seconds, the most severe clash with the police began. On the ground, there were reports of up to 60 injured on both sides. An officer commented, the far-right mob was suppressed in 13 minutes, but 50 miles away, new waves of rioters were gathering. 5:43 PM, hundreds of locals accused the authorities of two-tier policing. Starmer and the police were called traitors to Britain. In response, up to 8 vans arrived at the site of the upcoming battle, and almost immediately, crowds fiercely attacked the vehicles. Authorities warned, far-right thugs face sentences of 2 to 5 years. Dozens of mounted police units surrounded 3 blocks at once. In minutes, locals clashed with police shields. Preliminarily, up to 30 individuals suffered severe injuries and 2 horses were injured. In Parliament, Starmer was slammed. While the police suppress native Britons, machete gangs commit a crime every 3 minutes. Immediately, footage was leaked on Twitter, racking up 8.6 million views, showing unknown individuals wielding machetes on British streets. This became the breaking point. By evening, unknown individuals in balaclavas unleashed an attack on the lines of officers. Up to 23 police vehicles were recorded at the scenes. In response, masked rioters launched a fierce counterattack. 2 miles away, officers abandoned a van to furious crowds of locals. What started as a march by Britons against shoplifting gangs has escalated into nationwide protests. Now, up to 75% of the nation is officially against Starmer's rule. Millions of citizens have repeatedly stated that if you let illegals in, it will result in a historic spike in crime. Essentially, this crisis exposes who is truly dictating order on the streets from Birmingham to London. The gangs systematically plundering stores across the capital are certainly not imagination of so-called far-right protesters across country. This is police data. Up to 500,000 cases a year are officially recorded in Britain. Opposition leader Farage links this surge to illegal migration into Britain's cities, with up to 1,000 illegals arriving in the country per day. Effectively, this means unknown men from Africa and the Middle East without passports and outside police databases are entering once peaceful neighbourhoods. Countless criminals are currently operating out of state-funded hotels, exploiting an asylum system that the current administration seems utterly afraid to properly regulate due to ideological pressure. Shoplifting on an industrial scale is the establishment of uncontrolled criminal dominance. Think about it yourself. Up to 1,413 thefts occur per day, which mathematically means a new theft every minute. Observers consistently report identical gangs and demographics spotted on CCTV. Farage claims there are nationalities that are 8 times more likely to be prone to violent criminal raids. Official authorities warn that this is a manifestation of extreme right-wing ideology and opposition conspiracy theories. But similar carefully planned strategies have already devastated commercial zones in Manchester, Birmingham, and major shopping centres across the country. The evidence clearly points to transnational networks actively turning local high streets into an unregulated black market. None of these retail assaults happen by accident. Each raid serves as a calculated stress test of a paralysed justice system to see how much they can take. Predictably, criminal elements have discovered a glaring weakness. Law enforcement officers are retreating. Government ministers are making historical excuses. Moreover, the Prime Minister is effectively ignoring the root cause according to opposition. The surrender of these prestigious shopping districts represents a total collapse of institutional will, not just a resource shortage. Private security guards are not incapable of intervening. Strict legal restrictions prevent them from detaining anyone for more than a few hours. Internal directives discourage decisive action in every way, prioritizing diversity initiatives over arresting organized arrivals groups to avoid public relations disasters. Simply put, the state prefers to lose billions rather than risk political consequences. As a result, the daily reality for law-abiding citizens has changed dramatically. Small business owners are investing personal savings into bank-style security systems, shoppers are avoiding central districts, and retail employees face daily intimidation with zero backing. Entire commercial hubs are being handed over to foreign criminal groups. Starmer justifies this complete absence of law enforcement measures by constantly pointing to an inherited shortage of prison spaces. Leaked intelligence documents have finally exposed the operational data surrounding taxpayer-funded three-star hotels housing newly arrived asylum seekers. Emergency call volumes in these specific neighborhoods are rising rapidly beyond previous historical baselines. Analysts reviewing the figures discovered that social tension indicators in these precise postcodes spike by an average of 280% almost overnight. Residents living near these government-mandated facilities report a complete withdrawal of local law enforcement. Daily life for citizens has been structurally altered by the sudden influx of unvetted groups roaming residential streets. Mainstream media networks continually attempt to bypass these statistics, but the sheer volume of police activity makes it impossible to obscure. Nobody inside Whitehall wants to admit that converting local lodgings into migrant hubs has directly fueled community breakdowns. Desperate homeowners are forced to install private security cameras just to monitor their own front doors. Official records now undeniably link this rapid demographic transformation to a systemic collapse in public safety. Even global tech billionaires are no longer ignoring the mounting disorder unfolding across the United Kingdom. Elon Musk directly intervened in the British political crisis, generating immediate reactions across the global stage. Racking up over 32 million views in mere hours, his stark warning bypassed traditional news filters entirely. The Tesla CEO stated bluntly that the rapid demographic shifts in British cities will inevitably lead to a total national collapse. Such high-profile international scrutiny placed direct pressure on Downing Street to finally address the escalating situation. Confronted by journalists regarding the billionaire's prediction, Keir Starmer predictably resorted to his standard political deflection. Britain's Prime Minister deliberately ignored the crime statistics, instead proclaiming that all nationalities and religions are unconditionally welcome across the country. Deflecting from the failures of his own administration, he immediately began accusing far-right provocateurs of dividing the nation. Government spokespeople scrambled to frame any legitimate concern over neighbourhood safety as malicious political agitation. Yet, this aggressive media strategy completely stalled when Musk dropped a second statistical bombshell. Posting directly to his massive audience, he highlighted the reality that 250,000 sexual assaults are currently happening across Britain. Mathematical breakdowns of these figures reveal a grim operational timeline for local communities. Exactly one new sexual assault is statistically recorded every 3 minutes while politicians debate inclusive language in Parliament. Generations of families living in northern towns know exactly where these predatory networks operate. Certain urban districts have essentially become defined zones where notorious grooming gangs are allowed to function. Every local resident is fully aware of these specific geographic territories, yet the authorities consistently fail to intervene. opposition leaders have formally clarified that law enforcement possesses comprehensive intelligence on the backgrounds of these gang members. Detectives sitting in regional headquarters hold vast databases detailing the exact operational structures of these syndicates. Commanders know precisely who the perpetrators are, where they reside, and how they target vulnerable victims. Nigel Farage publicly addressed the establishment by explaining that the courts and police deliberately refuse to apply harsh justice. Reform UK representatives argue that this inaction is a conscious policy choice rather than a simple lack of investigative resources. Institutional paralysis has entirely replaced the fundamental duty to protect British citizens from organised predators. Critics echoing throughout the halls of Parliament boldly declared that Starmer's policing strategy is compromised by political correctness. Under this current Labour administration, officers will seemingly do absolutely everything in their power to avoid offending minority groups. Protecting the public image of specific demographics has explicitly superseded the basic requirement of maintaining law and order. Frontline cops are restrained by the looming threat of diversity tribunals if they dismantle these ethnic networks too aggressively. Justice in modern Britain has clearly fractured into a two-tier system where background dictates the level of law enforcement. Bureaucrats sitting comfortably in London offices would much rather manage surging crime than face accusations of institutional bias. Senior officials will eagerly find any procedural excuse to reject the deportation of 500 illegal migrants occupying a local commercial hotel. Keeping hundreds of undocumented young men in the heart of a community is processed as more acceptable than enforcing border sovereignty. Deportation flights are consistently blocked by activist lawyers while the streets outside remain entirely unpoliced. Taxpayers are essentially forced to bankroll their own societal decline through a framework of endless appeasement. Foreign criminals fully understand that the British state is far too concerned with public relations to ever execute mass expulsions. What was once a nation famous for its strict rule of law has been transformed into a staging ground for transnational syndicates. While ministers boast about diversity targets, working-class neighbourhoods are absorbing the physical impact of these policies. Mass suppression of data regarding these grooming networks represents a severe institutional failure. Mothers are demanding immediate answers regarding the safety of routes passing through areas populated by these state-sponsored facilities. Frustration is rapidly boiling over as the gap between the government's sanitised narrative and the street reality widens. A sovereign country cannot sustain order when its leaders prioritise the rights of undocumented arrivals over the security of its indigenous population. This impending collapse predicted by global observers is no longer an abstract theory, but a daily reality playing out on British pavements. When an administration actively shields the networks tearing the social fabric apart, the public inevitably realises they are entirely on their own. Financial bleeding across the United Kingdom continues unabated as the state expends up to £8 million every single day on social benefits and asylum accommodation. Compounding this massive fiscal drain is the unchecked crisis of 500,000 recorded shoplifting incidents per year that are actively tearing the national economy apart at the seams. While commercial high streets suffer from this industrial-scale looting, the leadership in Downing Street demands further sacrifice from hard-pressed British citizens. Keir Starmer continuously highlights a severe deficit in public finances, repeatedly warning the population about a staggering £20 billion fiscal black hole. Working-class families are being told to endure economic hardship just a little longer while their tax contributions are funneled into state-sponsored hotel contracts. This stark rhetoric of austerity, however, appears completely selective when looking at which sectors receive immediate government funding. A tragic consequence of this policy is visible on freezing winter pavements, where elderly British military veterans are left completely abandoned by the state. Generations of men who risk their lives to defend the realm are now sleeping in doorways, while the establishment prioritises luxury lodgings for undocumented arrivals. Public outrage is reaching an absolute boiling point as millions watch three-star hotels being converted into fully funded residential hubs for newly arrived migrants. Basic compassion and national gratitude have seemingly been erased from Whitehall's operational priorities to appease global human rights lobbies. National defence capabilities are similarly collapsing under the weight of this severe institutional mismanagement. The Royal Navy was recently forced to decommission 3 functional warships in a span of just a few months,